Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. My name is Funmi Owolabi. Today's review is going to be on an AI privacy statement. Let's talk about artificial intelligence and how there are privacy implications. The type of input and output data that can be ingested by certain artificial intelligence tools have repercussions for organizations that are either selling a product and service or obtaining a product and service. When we look at the privacy program, we're looking at things like an organization that is selling some type of service or product. But then, in order for them to sell their product and service, sometimes they're going to procure services from a supplier. And the privacy lifecycle begins at the point of collection. It goes through the use of personal data and then eventually deletion. Remember, we should not be retaining data indefinitely. Now, that's the first thing. Now, let's get to the AI piece. Why are we talking about this when we are a privacy law firm? We're talking about this because how artificial intelligence ingests data or impacts personal data still has obligations and responsibilities for either the customer or the supplier. That's why we're talking about it. And you can see here for this particular organization, there is mention here of the UK GDPR and the UK Data Protection Act. Now you might be wondering, why am I seeing this type of legislation in an AI statement? Because we know that personal data is implicated when we use artificial intelligence in some capacity. Let me give you an example of the different capacities. It may be that there is metadata associated with each input and output that is conducted by an individual. That metadata may have different personal data identifiers associated with it. That's at a minimum, okay? In order to log into any type of AI tool or system, it's likely that you'll have to use a username and password. Those constitute personal data because they can identify an individual. And outside of that, if the AI allows for the ingestion of different personal data identifiers like audio recordings, video recordings, photographs of individuals, that constitutes a processing activity, which is why AI and privacy need to be reviewed very carefully by organizations if they are going to be procuring AI tool or developing one in-house. Let's talk about this particular statement. I'm going to scroll down. I wanted to see if we could see when this was last revised. And this organization did provide a date, September 21st, 2025. So this is not terribly old. Let's take a look at the lawful basis. Now, why is this important? And I'm pretty sure this organization also has a specific privacy notice because this one is related to AI and its processing activities. Now, why have I mentioned that before we get into the lawful basis section? I've mentioned that because when we're looking at a privacy program, we're looking at all the different types of buckets associated with processing personal data that an organization conducts. Organizations don't just conduct processing related to customers. In order for you to have the customers, it's possible that you're going to have employees and contract workers that allow you to sell that product and service. Employees and contract workers make up a group of data subjects, just like your customers make up a group of data subjects. Now, all of these people are individuals, and I might actually try and do a chart on this channel introducing or indicating the different buckets of individuals to whom a privacy notice might be applicable. This particular statement relates to artificial intelligence and how privacy is implicated. Now, there may be tools or services or buckets of individuals where this AI privacy statement is not applicable, which is why I think it's very important for organizations to identify all of the data subjects who are implicated as a result of the business, to include your customers, your partners, your suppliers, your employees. And it may also be that this organization doesn't have products and services that utilize artificial intelligence, meaning that this statement wouldn't be applicable anyway. But the distinction here, I can give a couple of opinions of why I think they've made the distinction for the AI privacy statement as opposed to the other privacy statement I presume they have. Let's click it and see. You see, this one is different. One of the reasons I think it's valuable to separate them is because it may be that the activities associated with your artificial intelligence don't align with the other processing activities that you conduct. Let's say you have two products. One product is an AI product, one product is a non-AI product. How the AI product processes personal data may be different to the other one. In order to avoid confusion, because we know that the privacy laws tell organizations that it's really important to have the right tone and style when you're addressing a specific audience. The audience here, it appears, are those related to staffing. We've got recruiting, onboarding, and managing staff. Seems like that's the product that this organization has. So you have to think, how would these individuals that are recruiting, onboarding, and managing staff, how would they understand an organization's privacy practices? So separating it makes it easy. If I was to read an AI privacy statement and a other privacy notice related to the website processing, I would be able to understand it because I'm a practitioner. But again, the statements need to address the audience. That's very important. I really want to get into the AI piece. So we've got the purpose for processing the personal data, accessing and using the AI-powered features, and then also talking about the types of data that the AI-powered feature collects. So we've got information you input into the AI prompt, such as questions or convos, the output that is generated. Now, why is this really important to look at, and why do we keep talking about AI on the channel? We keep talking about AI on the channel because there are responsibilities associated with this processing activity that this organization needs to have considerations of and make sure that they meet their obligations in the geographies. Now, we don't see the geographies where this is provided. We do know that at a minimum, the United Kingdom is implicated because they've specifically outlined this law, but we don't know if there's other geographies. So I would say for the first thing is take a look at what the UK GDPR requires when it comes to ingesting certain types of input data that you're obtaining in your AI tool. What does the UK GDPR require? What types of obligations do we have? Do we have to be transparent? Do we have to provide notice? Do we have to have a retention policy? Those are all internal documentations that need to be drafted prior to the creation of any type of external facing statement. So again, AI is implicated by privacy. The last thing we're going to take a look at is where it's processed and stored. Now, the value of looking at this particular statement today is because we already know at least one geography that is implicated in relation to this privacy statement. When it comes to looking at geographies, companies need to be aware of the fact that there's something called a cross-border transfer. Now, I talk a lot on my channel in generalizations because there are many details that are always missing when I do these reviews. But I can speak to statements that are made by organizations generally. And the reason I've highlighted processed and stored is because this company has identified the fact that processing at least takes place in the United Kingdom. Now, the value in knowing this information is if there is going to be transfers of data, let's say, for example, they've actually outlined that the data is processed and stored within the United Kingdom. But for an organization that is providing its products and services globally, it's really important for organizations to understand the implications of transferring data outside of one jurisdiction. For example, let's say you're transferring data from the US to China. You need to be able to understand the privacy laws in the United States. You need to be able to understand the obligations in China if you're going to be conducting those transfers from country to country. You're not just looking at where you're headquartered. You're not just looking at the obligations for where you're going to transfer the data. You have to look at both, understand your responsibilities, outline them, document them, and then complete the transfer. So that's really important. And it doesn't change just because we're using artificial intelligence. All right, I really hope you enjoyed this review. If you have comments or questions, leave them below and I will see you in another review.